Individuals are not going to be a Department of Corrections forever. They will be released to our streets, and they will live in our neighborhoods, and they could potentially be our neighbor.
New allegations: the Correction Department is breaking Colorado law when it comes to housing mentally ill inmates, and that has lawmakers demanding some answers. The Department of Corrections in the hot seat with Colorado lawmakers.
That's right. Allegations have surfaced saying they are lying about successfully eliminating the number of mentally ill inmates held in solitary confinement. Under a 2014 law, the DOC is required to remove anyone deemed mentally ill out of solitary confinement. This law is in response to the murder of former prisons chief Tom Clements in March of 2013. He was gunned down at his front door at home by a recently released inmate, Evan Ebel. Ebel spent most of his time in prison in solitary confinement and was released after a clerical error by the courts. Tonight, only on Fox 31 Denver, investigative reporter Landrock has details from a DOC whistleblower showing that despite this new law, mentally ill are still being housed in solitary confinement.
Deb, 97 is the number I want you to remember. It is the percentage of prisoners that will be released back on the streets. That's according to the DOC. Now, state lawmakers want answers because they are worried some of the 97% that will be released will be more violent than they went in. Administrative segregation, also known as solitary confinement, puts inmates inside a 7-by-11 cell like this one, alone, for 23 hours a day with very limited human contact.
This isn't a way to treat an American.
In February 2014, the director of Colorado's prisons, Rick Ramish, testified in front of congressional leaders about Colorado's success rate in reducing the number of mentally ill inmates in administrative segregation. His testimony came almost a year after the assassination of his predecessor, Tom Clements.
In horrific irony, Mr. Clements was assassinated by an individual who had spent several years in administrative segregation and was released directly from segregation into the community, which is an absolute recipe for disaster.
That recipe for disaster prompted Colorado lawmakers to pass a new law last year to remove all seriously mentally ill inmates out of long-term confinement. They feared a mentally ill inmate would be released and commit a violent crime like Clements' murder.
It's a public safety issue.
Denise Mays is with the ACLU of Colorado.
We know conclusively that continuing to house prisoners in long-term solitary confinement, especially those with a serious mental illness, it only worsens their condition and can potentially make them less able to be rehabilitated. And the problem is they then get released into the general community, and it makes us all less safe.
Through an open records request, Fox 31 Denver obtained emails from the Department of Corrections whistleblower to Colorado lawmakers. It alleges the DOC is still housing inmates in administrative segregation because it is redefining who is mentally ill. This chart shows inmates with personality disorders, post-traumatic stress, and dementia are now not classified as seriously mentally ill. That means inmates with these diagnoses can still be held in a form of administrative segregation. This graph shows a sharp decline from June 2013 to September 2014, with 207 prisoners still in confinement. But at that time, the DOC claims it didn't have any.
I don't know if it's all credible information or not, but the DOC needs to respond.
Republican Representative Ken Lambert is demanding answers by tomorrow about the whistleblower's allegations.
This is an ongoing process.
We approached the director of the DOC after a recent meeting with lawmakers.
I stand by our numbers.
He wouldn't say any more, but later issued this statement. The fact that there is a disagreement regarding the precise methodology used does not suggest that the actual data being gathered and disseminated is in any way inaccurate. Now lawmakers are waiting for their answers. So this is the list of questions lawmakers have asked to be answered by tomorrow by DOC leadership. More than half of the 13 questions relates to this issue. The DOC has until tomorrow to give those answers in writing. Landrock, Fox 31 Denver.
We will follow up tomorrow.